There aren't many things that match the excitement you feel when that package you ordered finally arrives. While you might feel joy, these 10 elicited the exact opposite reaction from the receivers, with the consequences from the recipients ranging from extreme sickness to even losing their life. I'm your host Ethan, and here's 10 cursed deliveries people actually received. Before we get into the gruesome, we have to talk about just how much the postal system has changed in the past 100 years, with a prime example involving Charlotte May Pierstorff. On February 19th, 1914, the then 5-year-old Pierstorff was sent via mail from her mother to her grandmother, with the logic being that it would be cheaper than a plane ticket. And so, a postal sticker was placed on her coat, and with the help of her mother's cousin, who worked as a mail clerk, she was placed in the mail car and delivered 80 or so miles across Idaho from Grangeville to Lewiston. The United States Postal Office received news of the incident shortly after and proceeded to bar the shipment of not only all live humans, but all live animals. But that didn't stop people from shipping their For at least another year, people were caught doing so, and until they figured that maybe we should enforce this a little harsher, tougher punishments were enforced. If you want to hear more about Charlotte May Pierstorff's story, there's a book called Shipping May that details her journey. Just maybe think twice before ordering it online. Unfortunately, the rest of our stories are a little worse than that, as Luca Magnotta also shipped people, but in this case, they weren't alive, and they were in parts. In 2012, a package containing the left foot of Chinese international student Joan Lin was sent to the main offices of the Conservative Party of Canada, and then shortly after, a left hand was sent to the Liberal Party. In the following weeks, Lin's other hand and foot would be sent to 2 separate schools in the Vancouver area, and his head would be found at a small park in Montreal. After a video was found of Magnotta committing the act, he fled to Berlin, where after being found reading news about himself in an internet cafe, was apprehended by police, and then handed over to Canadian authorities. After a 12-week trial, Magnotta was sentenced to life in prison, where he is currently being housed. Stealing objects from the multitude of women he slayed, and then mailing them to the police, Dennis Rader, or BTK, taunted authorities for years. By sending letters to police and media outlets describing his horrible crimes, BTK became notorious throughout the United States as one of their most feared people, and his case was one of the country's biggest unsolved mysteries. After taking a lengthy hiatus from sending these letters, Rader resumed in 2004, going the extra mile, including a cereal box filled with several items of jewelry that he had taken from the women that he caused to lose their life. A couple of weeks later, he sent another letter including jewelry, which was handed over to the police. BTK was fortunately caught when his daughter Carrie had suspicions about her father, and upon giving a DNA sample to authorities, they were able to match it to some of his victims, resulting in his arrest in 2005. Luckily for people everywhere, Rader is now serving 10 consecutive life sentences, meaning he won't be free anytime soon. While some people send clues and keepsakes through packages, others use the package itself as a form of an attack. In 2001, one of the worst biochemical incidents in United States history occurred when letters containing anthrax spores were sent to several news offices and United States senators. These letters led to numerous infections and the unfortunate passing of 5 people, as well as injuries to 17 others. For years, authorities searched for the perpetrator before deducing the culprit as Bruce Edward Ivins, a scientist whose life work was figuring out a cure for anthrax. While Ivins ended his life before being apprehended by police, the main theory of his horrible actions was that he was using it as a way to figure out how the human body reacts to chemicals, in a way to find the proper cure. Ivins timed his attack about a month after the Twin Towers fell, and by using false clues, he was able to avoid detection for almost 7 years. Luckily, there haven't been many anthrax-related incidents following this, but the same can't be said for the alternative: ricin. There have been numerous cases of people using this toxin to harm others, but the first we're going to talk about is the card that Nicholas Todd Helman sent to his ex-girlfriend. In 2015, then 19-year-old Helman decided that the best way to get back at his ex and her new boyfriend would be to send them a scratch and sniff birthday card. The only issue, it was laced with the toxin. This wasn't the only way Helman tried winning her back, however, as the victim reported that he sent her numerous text messages, constant phone calls, and a letter that reportedly had traces of blood on it. Charged after explaining his plot to a coworker, Helman was sentenced for 20 to 40 years for the incident, and while no one ended up sick because of it, officials claimed that anybody who came into contact with the card wouldn't have lived longer than 4 days. Helman warned the victim's family not to open the letter, and after police were called, a SWAT team and a team of officers in hazmat suits were able to safely remove the letter, making this one of the scariest what-ifs in recent memory. Shannon Richardson, an American actress and model, made headlines only a couple of years before Helman, when in June of 2013 she was arrested for mailing rice and laced letters to President Barack Obama, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and Mark Glaze, who is the director of a firearm control organization. Richardson initially attempted to frame her estranged husband, Nathaniel, for the crime. However, her plan unraveled, and investigators quickly discovered her involvement. A former background actor on shows like The Vampire Diaries and The Walking Dead, Richardson was arrested and charged with multiple federal offenses, including possession and use of a biological toxin as a weapon. In December 2013, she pleaded guilty to the charges and was subsequently sentenced to an 18-year prison term. Richardson's projected release date is in November of 2028, but I think her chances of getting that big role might have taken a significant hit. Way before people were intentionally sending toxins as a way of harming others, the spread of diseases was unintentionally rampant through letters. For hundreds of years, ailments such as smallpox were unintentionally transferred from person to person, all through simple packages. In 1876, Canadian William Osler was suffering from smallpox when he sent an old schoolmate a letter, and while he stated he had decontaminated it, he never stated how. And while he also said that you shouldn't be afraid of this letter, it still raised significant concern. One instance afterwards with unfortunate results involving over 30 people infected happened in Saginaw, Michigan in 1901, after a woman opened a letter from her boyfriend who was stationed in Alaska, who was suffering from the disease. While many ended up sick, these incidents helped governments from around the world create new ways to disinfect mail, and in hand have prevented numerous incidents like this from occurring due to the scanners picking up suspicious materials that have been found on letters and packages throughout the world. The Austin serial bombings, which occurred in March 2018, sent shockwaves throughout the community and the nation. This series of bombings unfolded over a span of several weeks, keeping the city of Austin, Texas on edge and baffling law enforcement agencies. On March 2nd, 2018, a package bomb exploded at the home of Anthony Stephen House, ending his life. 10 days later, on March 12th, a second package bomb exploded, this time with the victim being Draylen Mason, a talented musician and scholar. A few hours later, the third package exploded, injuring 75-year-old Esperanza Herrera. As investigators scrambled to make sense of the attacks, a fourth bomb went off on March 18th, injuring 2 people. These bombings stoked fear and suspicion throughout Austin, leaving residents fearful of opening packages and law enforcement agencies searching for leads. The authorities eventually found a major breakthrough when the bomber left a 25-minute confession video on his phone, revealing details about the bombs and expressing his grievances. His identity was traced to Mark Anthony Condit, a 23-year-old resident of Pflugerville, Texas. On March 21st, 2018, as law enforcement closed in on him, Condit detonated a bomb in his vehicle, taking his own life. The motive behind the attacks remains unclear, but it appears that he was driven by a deep-seated anger and a desire to cause as much chaos as he could. Today, the Austin serial bombings serve as a chilling reminder of those persistent threats and the need for communities and law enforcement agencies to remain vigilant in the face of such horrific incidents. But in 2018, the mail bomb related incidents weren't limited to just Texas. Between October 22nd and November 2nd, a total of 16 suspicious packages containing explosive devices were sent to various prominent Democratic figures, critics of then President Donald Trump, and CNN's offices in New York City. The intended recipients of these packages included former President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, current US President Joe Biden, actor Robert De Niro, and several members of Congress. The devices were intercepted by authorities before they could explode, thanks to the diligence of postal workers and law enforcement agencies. The suspect, Cesar Sayoc, a fervent Trump supporter, was apprehended in Florida on October 26th. His van was covered in political stickers and inflammatory slogans. Sayoc was charged with multiple counts, including illegal mailing of explosives and making threats against former presidents. He ultimately pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The mail bomb incident sent shockwaves throughout the United States, underscoring the deep political divisions and increasing political hostility in the country. It started debates about the influence of political rhetoric on acts of violence such as this, and the need for civil discourse in the national political arena. These incidents also prompted heightened security measures for prominent law figures, such as the current president, and underscored the critical role of law enforcement in preventing situations like these horrible atrocities from occurring ever again. When you think of horrible things sent through the mail, one person and his heinous actions reigned supreme as the most well-known. That man, Ted Kaczynski. Otherwise known as the Unabomber, he carried out a series of bombings over nearly 2 decades, making him one of the most enigmatic and dangerous criminals in United States history. Kaczynski's reign of terror began in the late 1970s when he started sending homemade bombs to universities and airlines. These attacks seemed random, targeting people from various walks of life. While his homemade devices were meticulously crafted and designed to cause significant damage upon detonation, this only caused more widespread fear and confusion. What made the Unabomber unique was not only the level of sophistication in his devices, but also his motives. Kaczynski's manifesto, titled Industrial Society and Its Future, argued that technology and industrialization had dire consequences for society. He called for a return to a primitive, nature-based way of life. This manifesto, which was full of anti-technology and anti-establishment rhetoric, became wildly known after being published in the Washington Post and the New York Times after pressure from Kaczynski himself. The Unabomber managed to evade capture for years, despite an extensive manhunt, living in a remote cabin in the Montana wilderness. Kaczynski had adopted a self-sufficient lifestyle that mirrored his anti-technology beliefs. In 1996, he was finally apprehended after his brother recognized his writing style in the manifesto and alerted the authorities. He was arrested, tried, and subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His case brought to the forefront the discussion of the impact of technology on society and the limits of individual freedom. The Unabomber remains a haunting figure in the annals of American criminal history, serving as a chilling reminder of the potential for radicalization and violence in a society grappling with complex issues. That's our list of 10 of the most cursed deliveries people actually received. Which of these is the most haunting? Let us know in the comments below. Once more, I'm your host Ethan, and we'll see you in the next video.